I'm just going to ask, what does matinary mean?
The big story.
Okay.
Yeah. What's the positive big story about the world we want to live in? And I'm not sure sometimes that we talk enough about that.
Yeah, particularly with children, like it's kind of easy to say, oh yeah, we want women to live free from violence and be able to take control of their lives and do what they want, that kind of thing. But it's tied up with what you were saying before, that we don't have another narrative for childhood other than a pathway to adulthood. So, like, what is the other narrative then that we? What would that be? If it's not a pathway to adulthood, what is it?
It's a childhood free from abuse.
Anything else? Like,
I guess if you would say to like develop your capacities, you're still kind of putting in a pathway narrative, no?
I don't think you can exclude the pathway to adulthood
No.
itself, but there is somewhere something just innately, that's not a word, there's something just, I can't, something just good that I really can't think of a word for it, about being a child and enjoying life just as a child and living to your potentials. I mean, I don't know.
But without an innocence narrative?
I was trying to think of the words that the YQ have on there. You know, my pen that I keep obsessively playing with because I'm obsessed with it, so I've removed the pen. And it says something like, we want women to live to their potential or something. There's a statement that they have.
Yeah, and I guess that's more what I'm thinking about. Like, I mean, what does the world look like if we play down all the differences? And I'm thinking of, Ursula Le Guin's book, in the world where there's no men or women until they get to
her store. What's it called?
the left hand of darkness. Like people actually only become sexed when they're about to have sex, and then they either become male or female, and so anybody can become a male or female. Anybody can actually then carry a child.
Is that the vision of the world?
Well, I'm just saying. But what's the big story about what the world looks like when we've actually not forcing ourselves into our boxes, and when we've actually decoupled power from gender?
Yeah.
What does that world look like?
Yeah.
And when we've decoupled power from childhood and adulthood, like what does? And this is big, I know, but I'm just.
Yeah,
But what we often get to is people say, I mean, it's the reason I think that people often get to, but we're just different, is because they can't imagine what it looks like otherwise, and and we need people in power. What do we? It's like how can we need to tell the story about how it looks different.
Yeah. And I think it's the same with children and adults, that you can't imagine children holding any form of power because you instantly go to, well, we hold power over children because we need to protect them and need to guide them and all of that stuff. There's no sort of other understanding of how children could be in the world and have some power in their own right.
And how adults could be in the world and not have power.
Yeah.
And I think if we're talking to adults, Cara suggests, let's just not harm them. It's actually, I don't know that it has to be about childhood and all those sorts of things. I mean, we're talking to adults in this context, and adults in institutions, and the bottom line, bigger vision is it is that, right?
Be nice to each other.
Let's not a childhood without child abuse.
But having something like childhood free from violence just sort of centres violence in there, and it doesn't. It stops you thinking about something else.
Yeah, true.
But I think a really important point from that is that we have to be really careful to build on Erin's point with innocence, is that we tend to become very paternalistic, and we have to understand that the challenges and the difficulties are a part of life, and that they're as much part of children's lives as they are our life. And then we have to I don't know if we have to dichotomize between challenges and difficulties and violence, because that's not a difficulty, that's like a cruelty. And then that's not how you develop or grow, but you do develop and grow through hardship. So how do we have that conversation? How do we distinguish between that and like not becoming paternalistic and like children are just like they're just like little clouds that we have to protect, but that actually that giving them participation, giving them agency, giving them voice also means giving them opportunities to overcome difficulties and barriers.
That's very good.
But I would even say still the huge number of what we call regular hardships are still down to inequalities of opportunity.
Have been brought about either by inequality or individual oppression or an abuse.
That's
but not
like when we
saying
take a really bad downpour and send our children out into it just so that they can say, we can do that happily knowing we're not putting some violence or inequality on them, we're just like sidetracking. I just love it when there's like that, oh mum, you made us walk 2 kilometres, it was so hard. It was like, I went to auntie's house and they made me sleep on the floor on a mattress, it was so hard. I'm like, so I'm just on your point about hardships. These are hardships, but they just have to be carefully regulated.
That's just a
my standing
challenge.
holiday line was, where's your sense of adventure? As we're trudging up the hill in the pouring rain to the castle in Germany, where's your sense of adventure?
Remember that one.
They do it too.
I read in a book once that you should be able to walk the same amount of kilometres as you are old. A 3-year-old has to walk 3 kilometres.
Was that a Swiss book? I remember just going on long bike rides with my cousins, and they would be on those tiny little bikes. We would be on mountain bikes with like gears, and like their little legs have to pedal so much more. And they still wanted to keep up. Oh, that's so neat. Sorry, we were still on this.
Are we okay? Should we continue to the last question?
Yeah.
So we finish at some point?
Yep.
So how do you think institutions can promote healthy conceptions of masculinity within their organizations?
Everyone wear a dress day.
That'll solve it.
Yep.
I think it would go a long way, actually.
I think what's interesting about this, like, masculinity and femininity are often thought about in terms, like, as not each other, right? Like that's how we define them. And so when you're thinking, about certain institutions and their role of that institution, it sets the tone so much. So like a childcare centre, like it's a feminine organisation, and so that says so much about what the masculinity that men involved in that institution have to perform, and then the same in like really masculine organisations. So I think it's going to be quite context specific because each institution is going to have its own sort of culture around those things based on its functions.
I do think on an industry level, anything to go against the segregation, I think will be really good. Like I think it's not only masculinity and tight constraints on masculinity are found in both really masculine-dominated industries and female-dominated industries, and vice versa. So I think it's about not just bringing women into male-dominated areas, but bringing men into female-dominated areas as well.
I keep wondering if anyone's plotted, here's something for PME, countries that have high rates of sex desegregated schools, or whatever you call it, non-co-ed schools. And gender equality and violence against women. Like, countries where there's rarely any single-sex schools, and whether there's any. I know there'd be so many other factors. I'm just wondering about I'm thinking back to Trinity every time I see an article about Trinity and that whole single-sex school and the conversation we had in our stand-up this morning about one of the all-male schools in Brisbane wanting to do some work and how even their conceptualisation rate was really quite toxic, but about how, just about the whole sex disaggregated education system, how that, and I know that's not really answering that question, whether there's a correlation between that and broader gender inequality and then violence against women.